Today, we're going to talk about trends that maybe you should avoid. Oh, and hey, I'd like to mention this video's sponsor, Skillshare.com. Now, it's a brand new year here in 2019, and Skillshare will help keep you learning and thriving as they offer 25,000 different classes in coding, design, business, and more. For instance, you're about to watch my tutorial on design trends, but you could watch this course on developing your own style at Skillshare. Skillshare is also super affordable with a subscription that only costs $10 a month, but if you're one of the first 500 of my subscribers to click the link below here in the description, you get the first 2 months free. So take advantage. Hey everyone, Gary Simon of Coursetro. So as we've seen here with the brand new year 2019, a lot of other designers have put out their own videos about, what they think will be big trends going forward in graphic design and UI design in 2019. I decided to do something a little bit different. I waited about a month now, and now these are 3 trends that I've picked out and that I think that for the most part you should avoid unless you're gonna put a unique spin on it. So I'm gonna be showing you all shots from Dribbble, and all of these come from good designers that reach the front page. These are all examples that are front page of Dribbble.com. In order to do that, you have to have created good work. So I'm not making fun of them or any of that, but I'm just using these as examples. I'm going to show you a lot of just typical examples where we're seeing this be kind of overplayed by other designers, and also some good examples where designers have taken the general trend and they've made it their own. All right, so for today's question, which trends do you like or dislike the most from the list of 3 that I'm pointing out here in this video? All right, make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and let's get started. All right, so the very first trend that we're gonna focus on is what I'm calling the strangely proportioned human trend. And so it's basically these human characters that have really long limbs. There's also a subset of this trend that I'm calling the cankle trend. It's not fair to say that this guy has cankles because there's pants. They may just be really wide leg pants, but there's a few examples where you will definitely see that subset trend. And I think this trend came about simply because, if you want to depict humans in your designs or your illustrations or your user interfaces or whatever, it's nice to break out of the typical mold. You don't have to make everything literal. However, we are seeing a certain sort of subset of these type of illustrations that are very common. They're very overplayed. In fact, there's even a design library that features these sorts of people, not like this, but I'll show you an example going forward, a few examples actually. It's called Humans, Humaans, if you want to check it out. But I honestly, personally, I would probably stay away from trying to use these cookie cutter style characters simply because they're so prevalent right now and a lot of people are using them. So let's take a look at some more examples here. This is another great example. The composition itself is great, of course, but we're seeing a lot of these, like I said, the extremely huge extremities. There's no cankle here on this one though, but let's keep on going forward here. This dude's rocking out on guitar. Again, we're seeing a lot of this sort of style come about as a part of the strangely proportioned human trend. This one is actually pretty, it's not so abstract. I mean, the proportions are fairly, pretty much accurate, but it's whimsical. It's not bad. This guy has like a blow-up bubble white t-shirt you can kind of see there. Nonetheless, these are more of the type of characters that we're seeing that are a little bit more common with this trend. Here's the cankle trend right here. There's a bunch of examples of this. Not that I've included, but we're definitely seeing some cankles here. We got another cankle right here. Again, these compositions, I'm not trying not to make fun of them in and of themselves because they're good designs. They're featured on Dribbble, but this is a trend. If you just try to stick with the cookie cutter style people, I think you should avoid. This is a great example where you're taking, a current trend, but you're adding your own unique twist on it. I think this is just great. The colors, outside of the colors and everything, which is great, and the texturing, I think the way they've done this, you're not going to see another design that has a character that really just flows quite well like this. Here's another good example. This is a more literal approach, but the colors really make it, and the whole concept itself. This is another good example, I would say. It's more literal, of course. There's something up with the fingers right here. It's like under there, an extra finger there, but nonetheless, awesome. I love it. Now, the next trend I'm going to point out is the vegetation trend. Now, the vegetation trend, you're going to see a lot of these types of leafy vegetation depictions in the illustrations. And usually they're these fern style, and you'll see a lot of these going forward. We saw this one in the first trend, so this is a 2-for-1. We got the strangely proportioned human, and we also have the vegetation just worked in here. It's not nothing that's coming out too far, but nonetheless, we do have it. We also have, just very subtly, some vegetation, purple vegetation over here. I personally probably would have omitted it from using it in this context. Here we can see a lot of it occurring. And again, you have to admit, it looks really cool. But again, it's becoming quite overplayed as a trend. Now this one I actually kind of like just because it's so different. You know, it's bucking the trend. I mean, it's going with the trend. We have, you know, we're having vegetation in our illustration. It may be unnecessary, but at least it's very different. You're not going to see another one that's quite similar design to this. So if you're going to do it unique. Some more. We got some of those characters. I mean, these are the cookie cutter style characters that I've been talking about. And see, we have a more abstract, kind of simplistic approach to some vegetation here. This one does a pretty good job. It's relevant because they're outside. They have a lot of different types of vegetation. It's more a literal approach. So I think it does quite well. When I first saw this, I thought to myself, this one was nasty. But then it says 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, she feels nasty. You know, her top's coming off. But nonetheless, we do have we have vegetation here as well. It's very subtle, and I can't say that it's bad. All right, so the next trend is what I'm going to call the blob trend. Now, in 2018, if you paid attention to sites like Dribble.com and graphic design as a whole in the industry, that's when the blob really became popular. And what I'm referring to is this little background element here. It's just kind of a nice flowing blob. You know, it's like a Bezier curve with several different anchor points on it. And this was really in a response. It was a response to, you know, trying to break out of the standard rectangular hero section where everything's just kind of boxy. And I was a fan of it. I'm still a fan of it, but I think it needs to be done correctly and not mindlessly. And this is what this particular example, very good composition, but it's what I would call a 3-for-1 because we have the vegetation, we have the strangely proportioned human trend, and we also have the blob trend worked all in one. Very impressive. The same thing with this one. I featured the other 2 times, so this is also a 3-for-1. We have the human here, we have the vegetation, and we have the blob in the background, albeit, you know, it's very subtle. So I think if you're going to do a blob, you do it like this. Make it more subtle, or use maybe a different style of a blob rather than just like a few anchor points with, you know, these curves all over the place. So we'll see some more examples of this. This is more typical approach where, you know, you have a blob and it's kind of acting as a mask of sorts for some type of illustration in the middle. And here's another example. This is a 2-for-1 essentially. This is a great example of what I was talking about. You know, you can use this mask idea with nice flowing curves, but try to make it relevant to, you know, the purpose of the composition of the project. This is a bottle rocket, so, you know, you can use this in a sense. They could have made one of those typical, you know, little blobs, but this is taking that trend and, you know, applying it in a unique manner, which is what my whole point is. This right here, you know, it's definitely the blob trend, and we also have some vegetation worked in here, albeit, you know, quite subtle. Here as well, you can see it. We have vegetation, we have the blob, and we also have some characters, although these people are a little bit more unique than some of the other ones I've seen. Here we have just a blob in the background. You know, it works well in the composition. Like I said, these are all on the front page of Dribble. A lot of people like it. This character, I really like it too, because if you think about the strangely proportioned human trend, they've taken that trend. It's not exactly a literal representation of the human body, but it's also not so abstract to where it's looking like what everybody else is doing. She has clearly defined calf muscles here. We have some ankles going on. The blob trend as well, we can see right here in the background, albeit quite subtle. We have a blob in the back. This one's, there's a blob right here randomly. This one right here actually works quite well. It's not something that looks like you see everywhere from other designers. Here's another one that's just completely just blobs are everywhere, even in the background of the UI that they've placed it on. This is probably an example where I would probably ease back a little bit on this type of effect. This is a good example of taking that trend and trying to make it a little bit more unique. It really fits within this composition and it frames it a little bit more rather than just having, some sort of circular, almost circular blob sort of thing going on. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that and you took something away from it and answered today's question, which is which trends do you like or dislike the most from the 3 that I outlined here in this video. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.